Welcome to True Roots, Stories That Shape the Narrative. I'm so pleased to have as our guest today award-winning Southern fiction writer Mike Nemeth. Mike is the author, I believe, he will correct me if I'm wrong, of five novels. I hope I get these right. Defiled, The Undiscovered Country, The Two Lives of Eddie Kovacs, which we'll talk about a little bit, Parker's Choice, and most recently, A Tissue of Lies.
You've got it, Mike. Thank
Very
you for
good.
having
Mike
me.
hails from Wisconsin originally, but he now calls Metro Atlanta home. We have a lot to cover today. We'll see how much we get to in the short time we have. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Actually, I've been in the Atlanta area since 1969,
So
so
you're a native. You're an Atlanta
I
native
think I
now.
qualify as a Southerner now.
Yes, you do. You do. So for those who don't know you, I mean, I gave you a very, very quick introduction, but can you just tell us a little more about yourself?
Sure. Well, as you said, I grew up in Wisconsin, went to the University of Wisconsin, so I'm a Badger, uh, which is kind of unique down here. But so I got involved in, I'm using nice language. I got drafted into
Yeah.
the Army, spent some time in Southeast Asia. So I'm a Vietnam veteran, and it's had an impact on not only my life, but how I write, what I write, and we'll mention more about that as we go along here. Um, but then I was in the high tech industry. I'm old enough that I caught the wave of technology and computerization, automation, and so forth. Got very fortunate that way. I tell my grandkids, you need to find a wave and catch a wave. Whatever is really happening today, and I guess AI would be the first thing you'd think of. So I'm retired. Began writing in 2013, and and have just had some of the most remarkable writing experiences you can imagine.
Yeah, that's good. So you mentioned your Vietnam background and your your background as a high-tech executive. Can you let's just drill down on that for a minute. Um, what did your experience in each of those worlds teach you about writing about people under pressure? Because you write about people under pressure.
I do, I do. I think they're different. Um, Obviously, when your life is at stake, those are probably the highest stakes you can have.
Right.
But later in life, your stakes are your income, support of your family. So the pressure to do well in your job seems equal, but I think the reaction is different. I think that people who've been through a combat experience have a different view of life. It changes your perspectives. I think you know better how to prioritize things. And I don't think you feel pressure quite as much as people who haven't been through that experience. I think it's I'm searching for a word here where your character gets formed by experiences, and I think a war experience is the most pressure-filled experience you can ever have, and so
Sure.
things that happen later to people like that in life are easier, I think, for them to deal with.
Yeah. So you may have mentioned this earlier, and I apologize. What branch of the service were you in?
I was in the Army.
In the Army. Yeah.
Yep, yep, yep. So I was in the quartermaster corps, so logistics, supply, and the fortunate thing was it was at a time when the Army was actually a very early adopter of automation. I began by using automation tools in supplying troops in Vietnam. So I grew up as a user of computers before most people, well, 10 years before anybody had one in their living room.
Sure.
And so, I've always been grateful to the Army for the experience, to tell you the truth. It certainly changed my life. I, I had thought I was going to go a completely different way. And
Yeah.
it said, no, no, here's your new skill. Go forth and do well.
Yeah, you had plans and then you got that letter, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
there's an
let's,
old Jewish saying, uh, man plans and God laughs.
yeah, right, right. So let's delve into your books a little bit. So when somebody asks you what kind of novels you write, what do you tell them?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Mike, and it has two different kinds of answers, I think. Usually people want to know what sort of things happen in your story, right? So I tell them somebody always dies and somebody else always falls in love.
Yeah,
So they're essentially murder mysteries where the protagonist also falls in love with somebody who's integral to the story. But that's not actually what the books are about, right? Do you know Catherine Stockwell? Is that name
hmm
familiar to you? She
hmm
wrote The Help. And there's a quote. Her quote is, and I'll paraphrase a little bit, but her quote is, writers should write about what disturbs them, particularly if it doesn't seem to bother anyone else.
yeah,
And so all of my books actually have a background of some sort of issue that disturbs me.
right,
And so the murder mystery takes place, but you're also involved in something else as it goes
yeah,
along.
yeah. So I may get this wrong, but I believe your website or your bio describes your work. I just love this, the way you describe it as love stories tucked inside murder mysteries.
Right. Yeah.
You
Yep.
know, I love that description. Um, and so there are these social issues going on. There's a love story going on. There's a murder mystery. I mean, those are a lot of really disparate, interesting things to pack together in a novel. And how do you do that in such a way that you keep the reader's attention? Okay, but you're covering a lot of ground, right? In your
Well,
novels.
yeah, I guess so, Mike. I don't feel very challenged in that respect. I mean, in any murder mystery, if the person's a detective, then you sort of don't have a background. You just, maybe the victim has a background that you can talk about.
Right.
So what I do instead is I only ever in my five novels have one detective, and he's retired.
hmm
He's not even a current detective.
hmm
So my people who are solving these murders have different lives. They're not police people, they're not detectives. Uh, so so it's pretty easy for them to have a life that's a part of the story without kind of having to pull any tricks to pull it off.
Yeah.
These people, and then the love story part of it, I always make sure that the two people who are in love are both somehow involved in solving. So the two
Yeah.
of them are going to solve the murder while they fall in love. So so it's not really parts and pieces of a puzzle. They're
Sure.
really very integrated.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So, I mean, there's sort of a parallel with my writing because in my books, there is a crime, but more often than not, the person or persons involved in solving the crime are not detectives. they might have been at one time, or they're actually in some cases sort of working against the the establishment, if you will. I like that. I like what you're describing because it's sort of it moves you away from that sort of formulaic, right? The formulaic police procedural or the formulaic detective novel, and I think it makes a story a lot more interesting.
Well, in fact, yeah, I read one definition of crime fiction where it said that it's a protagonist who is fighting against an institution,
Right.
right? So your comment about somebody actually going against the police in one of my books, the person who's solving the murder solves it and doesn't let the police know what the story is.
Mm,
It's actually a better result, he thinks, his sense of fairness,
right.
and not tell the cops.
Where do you get your inspiration? I mean, does it come from a a really interesting plot twist that you come up with, or is it a character who speaks to you, or is it some sort of dilemma? I mean, every character in every book, I think, needs something, right? They're searching for something. I mean, so are you inspired initially by a character, by a plot twist, by some sort of dilemma that you just decide you want to write about, or what?
No, it goes back to the theme. So it goes back to what what point am I going to make in this book? How am I going to expose a social problem that I want people to think about?
Right,
Uh, So, I've had the criminal justice system, the civil justice system, outsourcing jobs to foreign countries, the medical establishment's treatment of the elderly, how we deal with end of life, uh, have all been themes. So it starts with the theme. I want to write about that issue.
yeah,
And then I draw on my personal experience. Hemingway once said, if you want to write about life, you first have to experience life.
yeah,
Uh, and I have had an interesting life.
sure,
So I can draw on a lot of personal experience as research material to throw into the story. But it begins with the theme, and then I concoct a story, and then I cast the characters.
right,
They're actually the last step. Just
okay,
as though if you were writing a screenplay and producing a movie, the last thing you would do is cast the characters.
sure, yeah, yeah. It's so interesting. So you're starting out. If I understand what you're saying correctly, you're starting out with some sort of social dilemma, socioeconomic dilemma, political dilemma, or whatever, and you're building on that. Something that you want to focus on. It's so interesting because a lot of writers, the spark will be, I mean, they might be walking down the street and overhear a little bit of a conversation about something, and begin to build a story around a character based on, something seemingly very frivolous and very almost like serendipitous, but it sounds to me from what you're saying that a lot more thought goes into the seed of your story.
Right.
The
Yes.
big picture issue, if you
Yeah,
will. Yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
Mike. So, and then I sort of storyboard a story. I have read literally thousands of, so all of John le Carre, William Goldman, Elmore Leonard, John D. MacDonald, John le Carre. So I kind of know what will make the story seem interesting because it's got to be entertaining. You can't
Sure.
preach.
Yeah.
It's got to be entertaining, and people have got to get the inspiration to think about it as a result of being entertained. Uh, so so that's really the second part. And then, like I said, characters. The characters have to fit the story, in my way of thinking. So I'm backward because I
Mhm.
think most authors start with, oh, here's an interesting character that I want to talk about.
Yeah. Not to get too binary, but you use the word storyboard. So does that mean that you are more a plotter than a pantser?
I think I'm a hybrid because
Okay.
the storyboard is only kind of a synopsis level. Um, and then once I sort of know the shape of the story, I can begin writing, and then things just happen.
And there are things along the way that surprise you?
Absolutely.
Yes, that you didn't expect. To me, that's one of the fascinating things about writing is the element of surprise.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Orson
so
Welles
that's
called
good.
them Orson Welles called them divine happenings. All of a sudden you're writing and you go, "Oh my gosh, this is this is the way it's going to go, not that way." Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So just building on that the themes that you write about. So, a lot of writers write simply to entertain their readers, and I'm sure you want to entertain your readers.
Yes.
But at the same time, I would imagine that you want your readers to finish a book with their thoughts having been provoked and to actually argue issues
Yes.
about the book. And to me, that's
Yes.
really powerful. So you're not just writing to entertain, you're not just writing to edify, you are really writing to provoke the thoughts of the reader and have them argue issues after they finish your book.
Yeah, I think of book clubs, Mike. So that's what the members of a book club really like to do, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Uh, we did or didn't like this idea that he's putting forth. We did or didn't like the way this character reacted to that premise. So I think in terms of not every reader out there, but if a book club were reading this story, what do you want them to talk about?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I'm actually a member of a book club and we're meeting tonight. And I love meeting because it's a very diverse group of readers, and we inevitably drill down and discuss, really important issues about the book. I don't love all the books that we read,
Yeah,
but I love the discussion that comes after we've read the books.
right.
That's really good. So let's drill down. Let's just deep dive and talk about your latest book, A Tissue of Lies. um, a little bit, and I want to have you describe that book, what it's about. But it's interesting to me because it is a prequel to the two lives of Eddie Kovacs, really, right?
Yes.
And so and before you describe the book, I would love for you to tell our viewers what after you had written the story about Eddie Kovacs, the adult, what inspired you to then go back and write a prequel after the fact about the 15-year old Eddie Kovacs?
Yeah, yeah. So here's where you're going to expose a little bit of my sort of diabolical thinking.
Okay.
So the two lives of Eddie Kovacs, just to give it some context, is about a retired detective who's on his is convinced to go undercover into a condo complex on Tybee Island because the DEA thinks people are dying of drug overdoses.
Mhm.
So this Eddie is a guy who sort of is archetypical of the baby boomer generation. He's a boomer. He has boomer attitudes, uh, and he's dealing with people who tend to be fairly wealthy in this condo complex as he's going through it. But this version of Eddie, this retired version of Eddie, is still trying to make up for what he did in Vietnam
Mm,
all those years ago. And that story is going to give him a choice for how he wants to end his career, end his productive life, his working life, and can he or can't he get over what he did in Vietnam?
yeah,
So here I have this story which probably appeals to boomers more than anybody else. And I began thinking of it as the second chapter of the boomer story. And I really needed a first chapter. How did this guy end up this way? You
right,
know, what happened to him in his formative years that created the Eddie Kovacs we know in the two lives of Eddie Kovacs? So one part of it was I sort of need to tell the rest of this guy's story.
sure.
Another part of it was boomers are taking an awful lot of criticism for the world we have left to our younger generations, right?
Sure. Yeah, I can say as a boomer, I that resonates with me. Yes.
Well, I wanted to write a book that might appeal to younger generations because it has a 15-year-old protagonist,
Hmm.
but would tell the story of what it was like to grow up as a boomer. You know, I tell my grandkids all the time, they're both teenagers. None of these problems we face today are new. In
Right.
fact, we had plenty of problems when we were growing up boomer.
Yeah.
And in fact, some of our problems were a lot worse than the problems you face. You're not going to get drafted. You're not going to get sent to Vietnam.
Yeah.
You're not going to have to fight in a war that nobody loves. Um,
Let's
so
hope not.
I'm sorry.
Let's hope not.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
I see what's happening on the Atlantic Ocean this morning, and I'm wondering. But
Yes. Yeah.
anyway, uh, so I felt like I had to show people the first part of the boomer story for the boomer generation and how Eddie ends up the way he does. Because he's a pretty damaged person by the time he's retired. I mean, he's functional, but he's pretty damaged by the experience of growing up boomer, and I wanted to show that. And then there's one other thing. Have you ever? I have done this experiment. Have you ever talked to somebody who actually enjoyed reading The Catcher in the Rye?
Um, Gosh. I mean, I think growing up, I was a big Salinger fan. I think I
Were
enjoyed
you?
it.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah, I
you're the
think so.
one.
The
You're
one,
the,
I'm the
you're the
one.
one.
Oh, that's funny.
I I have always been very confused by how The Catcher in the Rye became a classic,
Right.
because I personally don't really care for the book,
Hmm.
and so I wanted to write a coming of age story for the Boomer generation to sort of replace The Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah.
I
No,
know,
that's good.
I know that's
So for those readers who read the two lives first and form, I would imagine, some pretty strong opinions about Eddie,
yep.
um, how do you typically expect their image of Eddie and their compassion for or lack thereof for Eddie might change after they have read A Tissue of Lies?
Yeah, I don't, I don't think I wasn't seeking compassion
Hmm.
so much as understanding.
Okay.
It's like, okay, I can see what this is all about. And maybe a little bit of, oh my gosh, I'm probably pretty happy I didn't have to do what young Eddie went through.
Sure, sure. So I have always loved coming of age stories. And I would like for a minute to just talk a little bit. I think secondary characters can be really important. Obviously, Eddie is your primary character. But he's not your you have another character in the book who plays a very important role, I think. And can you talk a little bit about that character?
Well, uh, there are a couple, but are you talking about Marcy?
I'm talking about Marcy, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I like Marcy. I really like Marcy. I like her rebelliousness. I like her. I don't know. There's just something about Marcy that I maybe I can relate to. I don't know.
Marcy is Eddie's first girlfriend.
Right.
And so there's all of that sort of thing going on where, Eddie is having that girlfriend experience for the first time ever in his life. Uh, but more importantly, Marcy is so I told you I went to the University of Wisconsin. Well, I was there at a time when it was a hotbed of anti-war protest. So the Students for a Democratic Society, SDS,
Hmm.
actually had a place in the matriculation line. You could sign up for SDS as you were signing up for history.
Right.
Uh, and the Weathermen, if you know,
Oh,
the
yes.
Weathermen are the military arm,
Yep.
actually was launched at the University of Wisconsin.
Oh, I
So
did not know that. That's interesting.
I knew, I knew these rebellious characters, okay? I knew the kind of woman that Marcy was beginning to grow up to be.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to write about that. These are amazing women in their own right. And I wanted to have a character like Marcy to show where that sort of began, if you will. But maybe more important to the actual story is the fact that Marcy is the counterweight to Eddie's pretty parochial, stiff-backed, constricted home life, right?
Mhm.
Uh, they're they're Catholic. They're very rules-oriented people, his parents, and so forth. He goes to a parochial high school. He's really confined in this space of belief, if you will. And Marcy is the counterweight to that. She's like, oh, come on, don't you know about this? And oh, come on, here,
Yeah.
read this book and open your eyes. Oh, come on, there's a bigger world out there.
She
So
teaches him a lot.
yeah,
She
yeah,
teaches him a lot.
she teaches him,
Yeah.
and she's the
Yeah.
catalyst for his intellectual awakening, if you will.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Um, she's a great character. Do they so you finished the Tissue of Lies. You're moving on, and I do want to hear what you're working on next in a minute, but are Eddie and Marcy still living with you?
Uh, they they do, and in fact, when we talk about the next book, I'll talk about them a little bit again. Uh, so 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 I'm really, really, really unhappy with the justice system.
Hmm.
This really disturbs me. I think we have a justice system that was based upon English canon law initially and was great for 13 sparsely populated agrarian colonies.
Hmm.
That's not us anymore. Our system is not fail-proof. All you have to do is watch Dateline or 2020. to find out how many mistakes are made in the justice system. And I think they're not malicious mistakes. They're the result of a poor structure, a poor design of a justice system. So I want to write a book about prosecutorial misconduct, police misconduct,
Hmm.
and so forth. And one option is to make it fit between A Tissue of Lies and The Two Lives of Eddie Kovacs.
Oh, interesting. That sounds fascinating. Yeah. Not to get too much off out on a tangent, but I believe it was Tom, we talk about the Constitution, and the Constitution is obviously very important. But I think it was Thomas Jefferson who believed strongly that the Constitution needed to be revisited every generation
Yes, yes,
because he said this is a document for us, but we cannot expect this document to be the definitive document for generations and generations to come. And it's interesting. That's what it has become among those who are originalists. And we forget that it was originally intended to be a living document.
yes, yes, exactly. I mean, we're 250 years into this. We're 340 million diverse people. You really just can't expect people 250 years ago to have envisioned where we are today.
Sure. Yeah. So, yeah, let's talk before we move on and talk about what you're working on right now. Could you just quickly, just a little thumbnail descriptions of your three prior books, The Undiscovered Country, Defiled, and Parker's Choice? Just talk a little bit about what they are about before we move on and talk about what comes next in the life of Mike Nemeth.
So defiled is again, the simplistic answer to the question, what's it about? Is it's about an ugly divorce. So so these two people are getting a divorce, and they're going through this archaic legal process. Um, and the divorce gets ugly. And then the divorce gets violent. You remember, we're talking about murder mysteries, right?
Sure.
Uh, so it is a murder mystery. It is a love story eventually, but the background is going through this divorce process. The legal system becomes as much an antagonist as either party. In fact, the two parties sort of both become protagonists in dealing with this really ugly legal system that they're going through that causes as much of these problems as do the two people who are actually trying to get divorced. So that's defiled.
Okay.
Uh, so the Undiscovered Country is actually a sequel to Defiled.
Okay.
So Randall, the primary male character in Defiled, uh, his mother becomes very suddenly, very critically ill, hospitalized. Doctors can't figure out what's wrong with her. He begins to wonder, well, more than wonder, he suspects someone is actually trying to murder his mother. And they're obviously using a weapon that the doctors can't detect. Uh, but the story, and so he's got to figure out who's doing this, why are they doing this, and what the heck is the weapon? Because I tell people it's never been used by anybody before in a murder mystery, not even Agatha Christie, whom we all hate because she
Yeah.
did everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but the story is really about our treatment of the elderly.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, how does the medical establishment really deal with a person who's already lived their good life,
Yeah.
right? Well, they can be pretty dismissive.
Yeah.
It was inspired by my mom's passing and the treatment she received. And I was just infuriated. And so I immediately, so my first book took 2 years to write. The Undiscovered Country took 3 months.
Yeah.
It was just all this pent up rage
Sure.
that drove the words onto the paper. Uh, so then the third book, I wanted Mike to write a standalone. So Parker's Choice was the third book. And the backdrop to Parker's Choice is outsourcing American jobs. And not, we're not talking about manufacturing jobs. We're talking about white collar jobs
Right.
to foreign countries. That's the backdrop to this thing. Uh, and there's an element, it was published in 2020, but there's an element of AI here. So the people who are doing the outsourcing are developing AI to make it even worse for white collar workers because AI is going to take their jobs. If they
Mhm.
can't move to India,
Mhm.
AI will do it for them.
Right.
And I saw a fundamental evil in the uncontrolled use of those two tools, outsourcing and AI that I wanted to write about. But the story is actually about, or the events in the story are about uh, a, Parker's worst enemy floating dead in the Chattahoochee River behind his house,
Mm.
and the cops naturally think he did it, uh, and his I don't want to tell some things.
No, don't
But
give us any
but
spoilers.
he and a woman he falls in love with are on the run from cops and from crooks uh, who are committing fraud as they try to solve the murder mystery, and of course they fall in love.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you were in that environment, you would naturally fall in love. But
Yeah.
I'm joking. But and then came The Two Lives of Eddie Kovacs, and then A Tissue of Lies.
Yeah. So we're getting down toward the end here, but so you mentioned briefly about what you're working on now, which, if I understood correctly, is sort of between the two lives and tissue of lies. So
Maybe,
maybe.
maybe.
Okay.
It could also come after
It could
The
also
Two
come
Lives
after.
of Eddie Kovacs in terms of time frame.
Yeah.
So I'm debating that a little bit.
Where
Uh,
are you in the stage of that right now of writing and publishing that? Are you
I'm researching, Mike.
okay?
So here's a statistic. So since 2003, there have been thousands and thousands of allegations of prosecutorial misconduct. 3% of them have actually gone to court.
Mm,
3%. And of the 3%, almost all of them result either in acquittal or suspended sentence.
mm,
Prosecutors are basically immune to any standard of behavior.
mhm.
Prosecutors can do whatever the heck they want. And if you're caught in the criminal justice system, you are doomed. That's just a fact of life
Yeah.
in our current system. So I'm researching and, thinking through the storyboard kind of scenarios. How can I illustrate this in a way? It's all got to be believable, right?
Yeah. Yes.
There,
Yeah.
you can't just have, I hate antagonists who are just evil, unexplained evil. Well, they're just evil. I don't like that.
No, I don't either. I mean, every character, unless you're writing science fiction, every character is a human being with thoughts and feelings and motivations. They're not so, antagonists are not so flat that they're just pure bad, pure evil. For every character is a human being.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I like two words you used. One is motivation, and the other is flat. So you
Yeah.
never want a flat
Mm-mm.
antagonist. But you know, as 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 you go through the rewrite process, the most important thing to me is actually motivation. Are these characters doing things you would logically expect them to do or could conceive of them doing based upon who they are? So
Right.
motivation plays a huge role
Sure.
for me when I'm rewriting. I want to make sure everybody's motivations are believable and have, a logical reason for being there, for happening.
Yeah. Every character needs something.
Yes.
They need something, and you need to tap into that. So, I find this very frustrating because we're down toward the end here, and there's so many more things I want to talk about. So maybe we'll have to do this again sometime. But assuming you're interested in that. But I do have a couple of questions before we let viewers know how they can learn more about you. Do you have a typical writing day? Or is your writing regimented? Do you have a time certain, a place certain, and things that you do that are part of your writing routine, or is it a little more fluid than that?
It's interesting. The- so when I began writing Defiled, I was actually in my last year of professional work, and I was flying all over the world. Uh, but I had read a comment that Stephen King's early novels were written on his washing machine in the utility room because it was the only flat, uncovered surface in the house.
Yeah,
And I thought, you know what? If he can do it, I can do it. So Defiled got drafted, I'll just say drafted, on airplanes and in hotel rooms
sure.
all over the world. I don't do that anymore.
I understand. Yeah.
No, I have an office and I have a routine. So after I get through all the researching and storyboarding, which is fairly loosey-goosey kind of time, just as I think about things, once I start writing, 7:30 in the morning, I'm at my computer till noon.
Mhm.
I used to go longer sometimes, and I found it like counterproductive. Uh, so now it's 7:30 till noon, 7 days a week
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
at the desk in the office writing. I have, knock on wood, I have never experienced writer's block.
Yeah, that's good.
Uh, I, I, I come, when I'm actually writing, I wake up anxious to get to work every morning, and I'm blessed, I know, but I do, I do.
But a lot of that may be because you've spent so much time on the front end laying the groundwork, sowing the seed, doing the research,
Yeah,
storyboarding to the extent that you do. That a lot of that, the absence of writer's block and the motivation to write every day may come partially as a result of that. I mean, you spent all this
probably
time at the
so.
front end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably so.
So, okay, we're going to need to wrap up here. So, can you tell the viewers how they can learn more about you, how they can buy your books, and yeah, and anything else you want to close with? If there are things that you really wish I'd asked that I hadn't asked that you want to touch on briefly, yeah.
No, I think you've done a great job. Um, uh, so all five books uh, are on Amazon, of course. Um, all five books are on Ingram,
Hmm.
so you can buy them either place by title. All five books are in the system, as we call it. So you can actually walk into any bookstore, and if it's not on the shelf, you can order it
Okay.
because it's in the system.
Yeah.
And so any bookstore can do that. Uh, my website is mikenemethauthor.com. Very simple. Uh, and all five books are outlined there, and all the other junk that goes onto a website
Yeah.
is there, and you can hit the purchase button there and so forth. I'm on Facebook, and I don't write under a pseudonym, so I'm just Mike Nemeth. I'm on Instagram. I'm on X. Um, you can reach out to me in any of those ways.
Very good. Mike, this has been just delightful. I've had enjoyed this last 45 minutes so much.
I've had a great time. Thank you, Mike.
And so thank you so much for joining us today. And I look forward to reading your next book.
Super.
Take
Super.
care.
Thank you.